I mentioned Facebook because the logic of the social trading platform was, and I think today is still similar, right? You open a profile, you have your feed, you can tag other people, you can discuss with them, you can discuss with the support, or at least you could back then. And then when you're actually following someone and investing the money, when he trades in his profile, back then at least you could see what kind of position did he open, the volume, the price, and etc. And obviously if he had a profit and loss, you were able to see his statistics. There were so-called gurus, this is how they call them, I think, until now. So you can filter and choose where do you invest the money. So what they did is that they actually took the standard model of the Forex and CFDs trading, and they said, okay, what does our company do for those who have the money but don't have the knowledge?
Here we are. There's another Financial Frontiers podcast. I have a guest with me today, Petros Kalaitzis from Tools for Brokers. You have recently been made director or in charge of the Cyprus office. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining another episode. You're on episode 10.
Okay.
And as always, let's do let's start with your background. You have quite an interesting background, and I think we've got a lot of it here to talk about. Petros, tell us who you are, where you're from, where your background, and let's go.
Well, I don't know if it's interesting or not, but for sure it's kind of weird, right? I am born and raised in Greece, north part, beautiful city of Thessaloniki. I'm pretty sure you know it. I have actually a big passion about the sector since I was a kid. I used to watch films related to financial services companies and etc. So my studies are in the field. So I have studied business administration. I have done a couple of months in the Facoltà di Economia in Rome University for economy, and my master's degree is on financial management. So my whole university background is in the sector. I came to Cyprus in 2011. So this year it's officially 12 years with a small break in Asia. I will let you know in a while. So my very first job was in a very famous company which is called eToro. Back then I joined the dealing room. I was, if I remember correct, the third person on the dealing room, and the whole office in Cyprus was just probably less than 20 people.
Wow.
So it was more cozy, and we all know how big the company is now. So obviously they did well.
Very massive.
The first couple of years in my working life were spent in two dealing rooms. And then in 2015, I still remember this conversation. I got a call from a recruitment agency, one of the top ones in Limassol. And they were actually trying to convince me to move to a client-facing role from a dealing room, which I have to admit I wasn't so keen on. Finally, and I really thank him for that, he convinced me. So I have joined Saxo Bank in 2015 on a brand new department which was called account services. So we were a team of 5 in Cyprus. It was me with a dealing background, a person with a sales background, a person with a payments funding background, a person with a back office background, and a person with a support background. So it was kind of an experiment because Saxo Bank wanted to create a new department which will be serving both private and institutional arm on existing clients, which means that any kind of question from a simple query such as I cannot log into the platform up to discussing an execution query on a bond transaction with a chief dealer of Bank of Singapore or Citibank, and etc. Everything was going through us. We were overlapping with Copenhagen and Singapore teams and serving clients 24/5.
That's before crypto. But does Saxo have any crypto?
CFDs. But back then, no, right? It was the good old days with 33,000 products in one platform. And the asset classes were CFDs, stocks, futures, options, bonds, and pretty much that's it. So 3 amazing years in the bank. It's been a roller coaster, actually. We had 4 restructure processes, which means that we had a couple of brutally hard days. Seeing colleagues and friends going in a few minutes is not an easy thing, never. And I have actually moved around in 3 different departments within 3 years inside the bank. So from the service department to the sales department, business development for Greece. When we shut down the office in Athens, I had to fly to Greece and handle the Greek portfolio of clients. And finally, 2017, the bank decided to shut down the operations in Cyprus and move everything to Prague in Czech Republic. I didn't follow that time, but I moved to Singapore because I got a very nice offer from an ex-line manager from the bank. So I joined Singapore. That was actually my first B2B role. And back then we were selling software for market analysis. And I had to run the whole business development operations for Australia and New Zealand, but I was based in Singapore. Amazingly good experience. 1 year in Singapore, as you can probably imagine, is
amazing.
It's a lifetime experience. I had to travel a lot due to work, which is even better, right? So I've been to, if I remember correctly, within that 1 year, I have been to 12 different cities in 7 countries. So it was quite intense, but at the same time, I was given the opportunity to see things that probably I will not see ever again in my life. Yeah. 2018, my visa unfortunately expired, so the dream kind of finished. And
you couldn't extend it?
There was an option to extend it, and there was also an alternative to move to US for the headquarters of that company. I have to admit that back then the things were not looking so promising in that sector. And at the same time, I had a very good offer to come back to Cyprus for Tickmill, which is one of the most reputable companies in the market. So we decided with my wife to come back to European time zones, closer to the family, and etc. So I came back for Tickmill. I started as a sales team leader. Soon I took over also the support department. And I remember we started with 5 people. We ended up 19. We had an exceptionally good year in terms of growth. Things were going great. And in about 1.5 years after I joined, the company wanted to diversify the offer of the portfolio of the products. So they wanted to launch a new category of products, so-called ETDs, exchange traded derivatives, which is technically futures and options. Due to the experience that I had from Saxo Bank, we had a discussion with the management, and we agreed that I will actually drop my duties from the CFD side, and I will focus on building the client-facing team in that new project. We had to go from scratch, new CRM, new marketing funnels, everything was actually new. And obviously on the backside of the backlog, the execution and the operation side is quite different from the standard CFD world. So amazing experience, very nice project. We launched and that was 2021, if I remember correct. So after that, I have taken a decision after 3 wonderful years to leave Tickmill and join Naga, mainly because of the opportunity to see something a little bit different in the sector. For those who are not aware, Naga has its own social trading platform, copy trading. They have their own coin. They have their own exchange. They are listed in the Frankfurt Stock Exchange and the mother company. We also launched when I was there Naga Pay, which is a neobank product. And so you don't get the chance to see such a variety of projects or products in one company in Cyprus. And they gave me the opportunity to lead the customer experience department, which basically covers the whole client journey from the time you will click a button to open the account, whether it's going to be green, red, black, the software for the onboarding, the payment methods. So
Wait, green, red, and black? What does that mean?
what I mean is that the user experience is a huge part of how people choose to cooperate with the companies. So whether the buttons will be big, medium, small.
Okay, so it's categorizing customers basically.
Correct, and it's the look and feel, the user experience, and etc. So the role was actually having multiple arms, and that was the very interesting part for me. So from one side, I had to discuss things with the product team, and from the other side with the marketing team, etc. And in the middle, obviously, you have always the client, who is the kingmaker. So Naga was also a very interesting project. We were working 24/7. We had 4 different teams, more than 40 people around the clock for the various topics that I have mentioned. Things were going very well until I got a call from an owner of one of the ex-companies that I worked for, giving me a hint that he's going to sponsor a very nice and promising project, so-called prop trading firm, which is a hot topic nowadays. And he wanted me to join him in the journey and actually build everything for scratch in a startup. I didn't really think about it. I just said yes immediately. And I joined the trading pit, which is based in Limassol, Cyprus. Obviously the headquarters are not here, but the core team is in Cyprus, right? And it was a startup journey. So I started with the owner in the sofa with 2 laptops and etc. And right now, if I'm not mistaken, there are more than 30 people in the company. And then, of course, tools for brokers. So last October, I was given the opportunity to join the sales team and utilize my connections and try to expand the business and increase the revenue. And this year we had some sweet and sour news. Unfortunately, the current director, who is in the company for 10 years, she decided to move on. So we're going to miss her a lot. And she actually asked me if I want to replace her. As you probably understand, this is a big honor, so I said immediately yes.
So when you say sweet and sour, the sweet part is for you.
No, like it's always a mixed feeling. Like from one side, I was extremely happy that They trust me and they want me to carry on this difficult role. But on the other side, when somebody is there for 10 years and he's actually the face of the company in the region, you realize that it's not easy to say goodbye, which is going to happen end of the month.
That's interesting. So, I mean, there's a reason that they trust you with that, right? Because obviously your experience is quite deep, and I'm looking forward to this conversation because your experience is a unique one where you were in the early days of what is today really successful businesses, at least the majority of them, So, I mean, eToro, right? That is so for those who don't know, and I'm sure there's not many who don't know, whoever's involved in the industry, and eToro, correct me again here if I'm wrong, but I believe that first of all they've got their own platform, and
Correct.
It is not a brokerage; it is a copy trading. So let's kind of go back in history and how that, from your perspective, the expansion, how that all happened. So you mentioned there was 2012, right? 2011, were you?
2012, yes.
2012, you joined eToro when there were 25 people. Now
In the office of Cyprus,
in the
yes.
office of Cyprus today, I mean, eToro is just to put this into perspective, is worth over $1 billion. I don't know where they're listed. Are they listed, or are they just a private company?
I think they are listed in US, if I'm not mistaken.
So they're listed. They're millions of traders, investors who trade. You follow this leaderboard. There have been many fintech developers, let's call it providers in the industry, who have tried to create a similar product. It's their own. It's a proprietary product, and everybody speaks about them. They're massive. And it's going to be interesting to get into your eyes, your experience there. You said you were there for 3 years. What was that like? Because you also mentioned another expansion with Tickmill, where you mentioned your history in Tickmill also, and Tickmill is also one of the more reputable, very big brokers in the industry. So let's hear about eToro. Maybe there's some similarities here. How was that experience? And then for you, I'm sure for you, invaluable, like the skill, the experience, and the knowledge you get from being involved in a company like that is one that's difficult to find in terms of anyone's professional career, being involved in a company from that early stage and then experiencing that growth. So in the Cyprus office, you mentioned you entered as a dealer.
Yes, I was a junior dealer. That was actually my first job. I was lucky. I'm still lucky that every single company that I joined, even the current one, and actually especially the current one, despite all the background, there are too many things to learn. So sometimes, in my current position, I get into meetings and I realize that probably I'm the person with the least knowledge for the discussion, which is actually good for me, right? But as you can imagine, in 2012, on a company that is discussing about social trading and having a similar thing to Facebook, but only for financial reasons, where you can actually copy someone, whether you know or not how to invest your money. You just have to make a right choice and trust somebody else to trade for you. That was actually on its own a big discussion,
Innovation,
yes. Yeah. And me as a junior dealer on the first job, not only I had to understand how the sector works, but then I had to actually get into deep waters for things that are a little bit outside of the normal path for these years, right? So big school. I still remember the night shifts because we were covering the night shift from Limassol midnight to 8 o'clock. So yeah, as you mentioned, the technology, since then it belonged to them. It was very obvious that the management was very smart, and they were visionaries, right? So I remember there were discussions, and they were saying like, look guys, we will be big one day. And here they are. You mentioned Tickmill. Yes, that's also a big part of my professional life. On a work-life balance, I think Tickmill is one of the most good companies that at least this is what I hear, for an employee, right? So the people who are running the company really care about their assets, their employees. These 3 years in Tickmill allowed me to actually utilize the knowledge that I had both from the CFD world and the futures and options world, which is not happening so often in typical Forex brokers in Cyprus.
Well, you don't have to really hear about them, I think, because you have first-hand experience on what it's like to be an employee there. Thank you. This one goes, yeah. Thank you very much. You know, I can say I've heard that they're good, it's a good place to work, but I mean, you don't have to hear about it. You experienced it
firsthand.
Yeah, and what's also cool is that that one of the management thought about you when he started up his project for the trading pit, which that says a lot about you, in my view, right? So somebody who you worked for wanted you to work for them again in a new project, which is let's put it this side so it doesn't focus. That says a lot about you. That's cool. So in eToro, they had they've got many US clients, many. They have US clients, I believe, right?
Right now they do. Back then, to be honest, we didn't have. It was mainly European side. The headquarters were in Israel, as always.
As always.
But back then, the company didn't even have a footprint in US.
I think US is one of their major client base. I don't know. I mean, I only know eToro just as any average person in the public knows about eToro. I don't know the details there. I just know that they're very big. What do you think contributed to their success?
Look, there is a famous quote that says that if you want to be successful in the sector, you have to be first, fast, or cheat. They don't cheat, to be clear.
Good.
But they were first and fast.
I was going to ask you, they didn't have any competitors back then. And I would even, I don't know if this is like the term social trading. Did they coin it? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Like the term social trading, because you compared them to Facebook, and back then Facebook was whatever it was, 4 or 5 years old. There was nothing else that could compare. And what eToro set out to do, which is very smart, is focus on a specific niche, right? Yes. Trading, and combine it in what was back then kind of, Facebook was very big, but still like social trading, social networks was a kind of a new thing. 5 years old, it was still in the early days. Very smart.
I mentioned Facebook because the logic of the social trading platform was, and I think today is still similar, right? You open a profile, you have your feed, you can tag other people, you can discuss with them, you can discuss with the support, or at least you could back then. And then when you're actually following someone and investing the money, when he trades in his profile, back then at least you could see what kind of position did he open, the volume, the price, and etc. And obviously if he had a profit and loss, You were able to see statistics. There were so-called gurus. This is how they call them, I think, until now. So you can filter and choose where do you invest the money. So I think that what they did is that they actually took the standard model of the Forex and CFDs trading, and they said, okay, what does our company do for those who have the money but don't have the knowledge? And that was the game changer. As you said, there are a lot of companies who are doing this today. There are a lot of companies such as ours in Tools for Brokers that have tools to help these companies. So it was a revolution back then.
Well done to them. And your role, because, so if we think about, a standard broker, right? A brokerage, obviously, where they make available they give the trader access to the markets. And if the broker is going to be operating, especially like a hybrid model or even an A-book or a B-book model, a dealer is certainly needed, for whatever it is, risk management, making sure that the book is okay, that the broker is not exposed in any way or form. But in eToro, the gurus or the investors, were they trading with eToro being the broker, and the way what eToro was providing the market was this copy trading platform, but then obviously those trades need to be executed somewhere. Was eToro the execution venue?
No, just at least back in the days, it was just the venue for that. Yes.
And then they were passing the trade?
Yeah, it was a standard FX broker setup. The only difference was that they were giving the opportunity to the gurus to be followed by people. And when actually a guru is opening the trade, the proportion of that trade is being opened for the followers. But the execution was happening in the market, just like any other.
So then obviously eToro had their Fix API connection, which is Fix API is it's a specific protocol that is how the industry works where different systems, trading systems connect with each other. And this Fix API protocol obviously has tags that are relevant to a trade. So it's got a price, an open price, so it's got an ID, comp ID, temp ID, all of these things which we know technically, but generally speaking, it's a specific protocol for the financial services industry. And so I'm guessing that eToro had a Fix API connection to execution venues, since they were not, and I don't know if they are today, licensed to take that trade, and they just provided the technology, the platform, the user experience, and in all the trades that were coming through, they were sending it to the market.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, they are licensed, but regardless of that, as you can imagine, things probably have changed.
Well, you have to be licensed. Now that I'm thinking about it, you have to be licensed as an A-book, so of course you have to be licensed.
Again, the operation part of it was not my expertise, of course, and I didn't have any insight, but it was a standard execution model. And the big difference was actually the part where you could copy someone, and of course the user interface of the social trading platform.
And then, so you as a dealer, since everything was A-booked, obviously there's less risk for the company, but there is still some kind of a risk, because there's always a risk, right? Because
correct.
I mean, let's expand on that, right? So if I'm a copy trader, I'm copying someone, that person places a trade that gets sent to eToro, eToro takes that trade, or whichever A-book broker takes that trade, sends it to the market. But when we talk about that, where they send it to the market, they're actually opening the same trade on their account. It's not as if that the investor's trade, that investor has an account at the execution venue. It is repeated. The trade is actually happening with the broker, and then the broker, if they have to book it, and it happens automatically. It's not a manual thing. Automatically opens that trade, and that's how it gets sent to the market. So there's actually a mirror of that trade happening, which is open on the trading platforms of the A-book broker, as well as on the trading platform of the liquidity provider or the execution venue where the trade was opened, on a margin account which the broker has opened there.
Correct. If you actually, regardless who is the company, if we can make it a little bit more generic, you have the platform, you execute a trade, it goes through a software called Bridge, usually to the liquidity providers. This is a very simplified explanation, of course. And then, as you said, risk is a word that it exists always. It will. It's always a hot topic, especially nowadays, to be honest. And which tool you will use, whether it will be your own technology or you will buy from companies like us or whatever. There is a risk involved. There is some risk management involved, but the bottom line is that the actual trade is happening in terms of an A-book logic into an account that is funded by the money of the company, the broker.
Awesome. So that's interesting. What contributes to the success of eToro, as you mentioned, there's so many different sayings about what contributes to success. But I think if you're a visionary, as you mentioned, the owners were, and surely they were, because back in 2012, no other competitor, social trading maybe wasn't even a thing, whatever it is. Then you moved. So that's all good. Then you moved on to Saxo Bank. And that was
client-facing role.
Client-facing role, and that was still in Cyprus, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that gave you eventually, in your 3 years there, the opportunity to live in Singapore, which is another amazing topic.
Yeah, more or less. You could say that, because actually the reason that I moved to Singapore after Saxo Bank was that one of my line managers that we were working very closely in Saxo Bank. He left a little bit earlier than me.
Oh, so you weren't in Singapore with Saxo Bank?
No.
Okay.
So I was working in Limassol. Limassol used to be the headquarters for MENA region. So we were covering, Central Eastern Europe plus MENA plus Turkey from here, right? And
Middle East, North Africa.
Yes. I was lucky enough to report to two very senior managers in terms of the hierarchy in Saxo Bank, and when we had the last restructuring, and they were moving the office from Limassol to Prague, some of us got dismissed, some of us resigned, and some of us moved to Prague, right? So this person left the company, and when I also left, we were discussing, and because he knew me from the role, the latest role that I had in the bank, he told me that he's joining Focus Vision, the US company, as a CEO, and he would like me to go to Singapore and help him expand the business there. This is how I ended up. So you can safely say that because of Saxo, I moved
you
to
went
Singapore.
to Focus Vision. And that is, I guess, a different a company not related to our sector, but it was a small break, and then you came back to the sector from there.
True.
So let's talk about Saxo Bank, because that's obviously another very big name, right? And you mentioned Saxo Bank. You mentioned a few things there which were interesting, and I'm going to maybe ask you to repeat that. But one thing is, when when I think of Saxo Bank, I haven't worked with them, right? I haven't worked with them, but I know them obviously. And for me, if you had to ask me what does Saxo Bank do, my immediate answer would be they're a liquidity provider.
Okay, that's
and is that incorrect?
This is correct, but it's a small portion of what they can do.
And I remember now what you mentioned. You said that you were client facing and both for private and business, institutional. So when you say private, does that mean an investor? So any medium-sized investor, I would imagine that they have a minimum deposit.
They had back then a minimum deposit of $10,000 just to open the account, and the private side of the bank was covering individuals such as you and me that can cover the minimum investment, plus small corporate accounts that actually have one or two owners. So that would be under the private arm, right? You can still have a corporate account as Dinos Ltd, in which you are the owner. This is still under the private arm. The institutional arm of the bank has clients such as Citibank, Julius Baer, Bank of Singapore, Deutsche Bank. So they are financial institutions who are clients of the bank, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So that department was kind of experiment, was created to serve all of them. As long as they are already onboarded, you had to talk with that department as a first line.
So how big would you say the retail FX CFD business, which I mean, as DGM, I'm very involved in, and tools for brokers as well. You know, your standard retail broker that has MetaTrader, that with quotes for Forex, whatever it is. How big of a portion is that side of the business for Saxo?
It was quite big. Okay. Look, back then, Saxo Bank, and that's also a revolution back then in the markets. Saxo Bank was created, this is public information if you see the owners speaking and etc. The owners, sorry. They wanted to give all the tools that only the institutional business had into the private investors. This is how they started the bank. And that technically means that they created a platform which can support back then more than 33,000 products, codes, you name it, in various asset classes.
Stocks, Forex,
CFDs, listed stocks, futures, options, bonds, everything was happening from the platform. Plus the platform was actually the client area. You could upload your documents, you can open a service ticket.
When did they start that?
If I remember correct, 2007, if I'm not mistaken. So I was reading a recent article. They grew up fast back in the good days. I mean, when I was there, we had, if I remember correct, around 25 offices and more than 2,000 employees around the globe. And as you can imagine, having a company like this in Cyprus and be able to work there was, to be honest, priceless. I met some of the most smart and brilliant minds in the sector, in my opinion. With most of them, we are now friends. And I was lucky enough to have two line managers that were obsessed with customer experience. This is how I actually got trained. And I told you that, it was my very first client facing role. And in the beginning, I was thinking that I don't belong there, right? I don't like to talk to people or something like that. But through the training and the leadership of these two, I can actually say right now that I cannot even imagine going back. So I believe as a person that the customer experience is the number one thing. You can have the best product. Of course, you need to have a good product, right? Of course, you need very nice marketing teams, very nice CFO, etc. But a very nice product on its own can be destroyed by a bad customer experience. A good budget can be destroyed by a bad reputation from a customer that is not happy. So in all the roles that I have been working, including the last one in Tools for Brokers, we are trying to make the experience of the client, whether it's B2B or B2C, exceptionally good. Obviously, cannot achieve that, but at least this is the target.
Right. Okay, so Saxo Bank, as you mentioned, that the client facing, you have to, if you don't go through the experience, of what it is that the end customers, what is interesting to them. If you work in this, actually, I spoke about this topic with your colleague last week in the podcast over here, where customer experience, is really important. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good your budget is, your marketing, your sales, your et cetera, if your product is not good, there's an expiry date. You can't build on, it's the foundation. At the end of the day, your product needs to be good. On the flip side, you could have an amazing product, like brilliant, second to none. If nobody knows about it, that's all it would be, just an unused, brilliant product. It's all cohesive. It all has to work all together. But at the end of the day, what's fundamentally important is that the product is good. And you can only find out if the product's good or not by understanding and really listening to what that end user is saying and what they like and what they don't like, and adjusting to what they're saying. And I think that puts you in a good position, right? Because now at Tools for Brokers, just makes sense that you're head of the Cyprus office, and I think that experience is gonna help. Tools for Brokers, which is already successful, they are already, they already have really good products, but adding this extra dynamic, which I think Tools for Brokers did not have, just because it's not their line of business, access to that end trader, this perspective that you're going to give them, that experience that you're going to have, that you have, will help, I believe, the Tools for Brokers create even better products than what they currently have. So if we move on to Tickmill now, let's talk about a little bit quickly about that, because I also want to maybe get your insight about what your plans are for Tools for Brokers, what your goals are there. And I guess, speaking about your past and your experience helps build context towards, how you position yourself and the goals that you have. So in Tickmill, another company that just exploded, right? I remember them from, I actually went to an interview, and they were a different company before. They had a different name.
Armada.
No. They were from Armada, but they had a different name, and then they made it all one.
Vipro.
That's it.
Yes.
So I went for an interview there before I started my company. At Vipro Markets, I met one of the owners there. He interviewed me. It was interesting. I actually wanted to, come to a podcast. I'll invite you. He's invited. So What was that experience like? So you were there from 2018.
2018 to 2021.
So they were already kind of big in 2018. Was
They
Vipro-
were in the beginning of being big. So no, they were not Vipro. They were
Vipro was already open and already dissolved, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
So sometimes life has some funny ways to connect the dots. So when I left Saxo Bank, I was actually negotiating a role with Tickmill almost immediately after I left. And then because my ex-line manager that I really trust called me, we had to stop the negotiation and I moved to Singapore. And then actually I came back for Tickmill. So within this 1 year that I left from the country, I still remember it. The very first time I joined the office, I think probably they were around 25 people. And I remember this huge space with empty desks, just 25 people. And I had a comment. I said, why is it so empty here? And I remember they were telling me, because we're going to be big. So there I go for 1 year. I come back and they are already 70. I was number 68, something like that. And I'm like, wow, that's phenomenal. Like, well done. And if I'm not mistaken, right now they are more than 200.
Yeah.
We had, I mean, even in my team, in the very first year, we had, I still remember the number, 124% growth, yes, in terms of revenue and the target. So, and obviously you grow in people, like from 5 people, my team grew up to 19. I think Tickmill is giving very good trading conditions, which of course other companies do the same, right? Don't get me wrong. I think, and I've seen that sometimes they don't really care to sacrifice some extra profit for the good of the trader. And that's priceless for me in my standards. As I said, at the end of the day, each company is not the desk and the building. Each company, it's the people who work for the company, right? So when you have people that they like the job and they care and you care about them, things grow.
Then great things happen.
Yeah, like that's it. Look, I joined them because in the original discussions they have mentioned that maybe we are small, maybe we are medium, we want to become big, but we also want to diversify our portfolio. I'm a huge fan of futures, products and options, and I think that if you actually combine them properly with a standard Forex and CFD product, you can have a very nice combination to offer to a lot of different clients in terms of category, because obviously the personas, so-called, so the people who are the target audience, are not the same for a futures product and a CFD product, right? But a company that would be able to have a multi-asset, multi-level or multi-language offering to the end client through, obviously, as you said, good products and good partnership with software providers such as us, I think it will have a very big competitive advantage.
Can you give a bit of a description here from your understanding, your perspective, which obviously is quite detailed, as I understand, so you mentioned ETD, exchange traded derivative,
yeah,
which is a future
or an option,
and then versus CFD. A lot of the viewers, I guess, will already understand what these are, but maybe that the specifics. What is the difference? How does it actually work? Right.
Okay.
Let's
look on a hard explanation. based on the definition, a futures contract is actually an agreement between two parties to buy or sell something on a predefined price in the future. Now, practically, this means that when you are trading oil or gold, silver, corn, commodity, in a normal CFD world, you are trading the CFD, which is a derivative product. It can be traded usually around the clock, so over the counter, so-called. And the actual benchmark for that, the underlying asset of this is the futures. So the underlying asset of a oil CFD contract is the futures contract. The futures contract is still a derivative, so that simply means that if you have to buy $100,000 worth of the product, you don't need all of this money. You need a portion of it. Let's say that it's 5,000. That's why it's a derivative. This is a definition of a derivative product. But the big difference is that this product is being traded into an exchange. Similar to a stock exchange, there are future exchanges, right? And it has a predefined size. The price is being controlled by the supply and demand, so buyers and sellers. In order to buy or sell, there needs to be somebody else who is selling or buying on the other side. The spread is defined, and the whole contract specifications are defined by the exchange. So regardless if you are trading with Tickmill or any other broker, you will get the same price at the same market depth for the same notional value, as long as the number of contracts exist into the market. Okay. In the very old days, these products have been mainly for institutional clients. They can be used for physical hedging. For example, a shipping company can buy X thousand of barrels in oil, and if the price of the oil will grow significantly, they are actually making some money from the buying of the futures contract, and they are diversifying the risk that they have because of the price change. In agriculture, there are people who are buying corn or any other commodity with a physical delivery. So they buy the contract of the corn, and somebody is sending them X number of tons corn for their field.
And where is it stored?
Into a physical location. So you need to have a physical location to store it, right? Obviously, in the Forex and the brokers world, they don't send you barrels with oil or plates of gold, and that would be awkward. So this is for speculation. So you are speculating that the price will go up or down in the future. The big difference, as I said, is this is a listed product, so it's controlled by the exchange. There is a clearing party which is independent, and it's like a referee. So you're buying, I'm selling. The clearing party needs to make sure that there will be this transaction. On a typical CFD broker model, all these don't exist because the broker itself can be the house, as they call it, or they can send the order to the liquidity providers for the book. Nowadays, the exchanges have created the so-called micro products, which are significantly lower in size and price, and actually they are very competitive into the CFD world, because you are trading something that it has more or less the same cost for you and you can afford it, but at the same time you are trading something under the safety of the exchange. Obviously, if the broker is legitimate, you have nothing to be afraid of.
So, it makes sense, and the terms also make sense. So, a broker, what does it mean? I'm brokering a deal. I'm taking,
Correct.
I'm offering you a product that is not defined by me; it's defined by an exchange. And the difference is, in the future, you're at the actual exchange. It's the actual product. But I also have, in configuring these products, I know that we set a expiry date.
Correct.
On the future. And that's not defined. You can't just choose. Every futures contract has a predefined expiry date, and that it's not editable. I mean, that's what it is. What it is. So if I enter into a future contract, what if I wanted to exit out of it from before it expires?
Look, you're absolutely right. All the product specifications are defined by the exchange. So let's say that the next future contract, for the sake of the example, will expire in September. Let's say the third Friday of September. There are some rules until up to which day you can close your position. If you are using the product for physical delivery or for speculation, I mean, it's a whole concept. We don't really need to get into the details, but the big difference, as you mentioned, is that there is an expiry date. So if you want to get out of the contract, obviously you can let it until the expiration date. In some products, I'm not referring specifically to futures. In some products, you have the option to execute prior to the day or not. Right? This is happening mainly in options. And the big, when you're trading a CFD on in oil, you have a price. You can open a trade now, and you can actually close it in 7 months if you want, right?
5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Into the futures world, you cannot carry with the same contract after the expiration date. That's why there are rollovers. So you're actually shifting to the new one, which technically means that you're shutting down your position into the current contract and you are entering into the next one. When you are trading the CFDs, this procedure is happening into the broker side. Usually you don't even understand it, or you see a small adjustment into the swaps of the broker.
Yes.
And technically this is happening because of the difference from the old and the new contract into the futures.
Right. So I know in MetaTrader, to facilitate a futures contract, there's ways to do that. Does Tools for Brokers have any third-party, a plugin to facilitate a futures?
Look, we don't have a plugin for that, but we are actually, one of our core product actually, it's called Trade Processor, and it's a bridge. Okay, so it's a software that, on a very simplified logic, takes the trade from the platform and sends it to the liquidity provider on a very simple thing. So the bridge itself, there are, as we discussed before, in terms of how good the product is and etc. Obviously, it covers the biggest platform in the market, which is MetaQuotes, MT4, MT5, plus 2 other platforms. And we have on the pipeline, some cryptos, and both CFDs and physical. Yes, these are already fully integrated execution models. And we also have in the pipeline platforms and discussions to be able to execute these kind of products, because the setup is way different. And we actually believe that this is actually a very good area, that not that it doesn't exist, but the products that are on the market, both us and the competitors, are not fully developed in that area, mainly because the target audience, which is actually the broker, was focusing into the CFDs, right? So we follow our clients, basically.
That's exactly right. And I think the industry will change, and our sectors, in the B2B space, will adjust according to what the market wants. When we're talking about the market, we're talking about what the end trader wants. And as the end trader starts getting educated exactly how these things work, then the demand's gonna come, right? Because without me being a trader, I believe there are benefits. There's pros and cons, whether you're trading a CFD or whether you're trading a future or you're directly on the actual exchange with single stocks, and as the industry gets educated and understands exactly the difference between these products, and obviously, the education comes in forms of, a podcast like this, where we don't get into the details, but at least we've put it as a subject line. Now go do your homework. These things are going to come into demand, and I think it's a good initiative from Tools for Brokers to start creating these things so that you're ready for when the broker asks for it, and the broker will ask for it because their customer has asked for it. So what are your future goals in Tools for Brokers? How do you plan to improve?
Look, obviously, the typical answer is that we need to grow and expand the business of our clients and partners. Therefore, that will increase also our business and revenue. We are giving a huge amount of resources into the bridge, to be honest. I mean, Tools for Brokers started in the early days as a plugin provider, so we have an exceptionally good reputation in that sphere, which is still a big part of our business, of course. But in the very last few years, the company has given a lot of attention and resources to the bridge. And we are very proud that we are now one of the top ones based on numbers in terms of volume and clients, right? The product itself, I think it's very good. My focus will be to actually make our clients, whether they are existing or prospects, understand a little bit of what the product can do. Because I found some exceptionally good features that I didn't even know that exist into the bridge, and that can be very helpful for the end client and therefore for the broker. And
what kind of features would you want to maybe highlight a few?
Look, as I said before, risk is a word that will always be here. I'm not going to call names, but from time to time, now and then, you hear about things that are happening. You remember the Swiss franc event. For those who follow the Greek market, we had some issues back in 2016 with the bonds of Greece being into junk category, and then that affected the Greek exchange. I was in Saxo Bank back then, so amazing days into the floor. Now we are laughing, but back then it was hard. Okay, so there will always be a new Swiss franc event or a new war or something, right? So
Black Swan events is what
yes, correct. So the tool has to be there, ready to support your risk management decision as a broker. And right now it has some functionalities about B-book, A-book. Obviously, it follows the regulation for best execution practices and etc. Yes, but at the end of the day, it's a software. So everybody's investing in AI. I understand that. We are also keen on doing this, but the human element is actually the decision maker. Okay. So a good software will be there to execute what you are doing and your choice. So your choice has to be the correct one. Some of the features to the risk management side of the product, they are good, and they were not, for any reason, promoted as much as they would help. And another thing is that the same software can be used for the new hot trend, which is prop trading firms. So it's exactly the same software, but it's a different use of it. We already have some quite big clients in this sphere. I personally know the competition a little bit deeper because of my experience in the trading pit, and I really believe that the product is extremely good for the prop trading firms. And as I said, it's the same product, so it can be used for both cases. So my goal is to help the company become a little bit or as much better as we can into the customer experience. My role and my background, I think it will help the company, and the company will help me to explain what do the brokers need for their clients. Yes. Mainly because I was the one who was speaking to the clients into the broker side. So when we need a swap-free solution for MENA region clients, more or less I understand what will the broker need to handle the risk for what the end client is asking. There is an exceptionally good client base and partnership portfolio, let's call it, and hopefully we will shift more business from our competitors to us.
Yeah, I also think that in terms of thinking about the market size, right? There's that perspective, shifting from competitors to shifting clients from one competitor to you. And I think about this in my company, DGM. So I'm really not interested in what my competitors are doing, because they've got their own context, they've got their own story, they've got their own details. I have mine, right? Mm-hmm. I don't look at what they're doing. If you had to compare one specific product, like just bridge, yes, that makes sense, right? And I'm speaking about from a tools for brokers standpoint. There's bridge. There's only a bridge. Then I need to bring from the competitor. But if you look at the bigger, the overalls, the size of the industry, there's an abundance. And when I look at it from DGM's perspective, I actually had this conversation with a potential customer who actually became a customer recently. I said, what do you have better than your competitor? So I told him, I don't know what my competitors have, or I don't have the context. They speak to their customers. They know what they need to do. My only competitor is myself, DGM. My only competitor is me. And every day I look at how I can, and this I think applies maybe just as general, I think it's worked for me personally, it's worked for me in the company, is to be a better version of myself today than what I was yesterday. And in the perspective of my company, how do I become a better version? How does a DGM become a better version of itself yesterday than it is today? And that is understanding what the end customer wants, and because I'm serving them, right? So what am I doing good and what am I doing bad? Assess it and adjust. That's my competition is only me, because I know my own story about me and the context. And then I think the same applies for tools for brokers and each person individually, right? So, when we talk about, and now I'm speaking about this also from a DGM to tools for brokers cooperation. There are plugins, there are bridges, there are things, some might go to other competitors, but there are different solutions. There's, we've created an infrastructure for brokers who use some tools from tools for brokers, some tools from other competitors, whatever it is. Call them competitors, whatever you want. But in the whole scheme of things, there's something unique from each company or individual.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree with you. So the reason that I mentioned the competitors, it's mainly on the product side. I mean, you said it a few minutes ago, like if you don't have a very good product, at some point you cannot go far. Yes. And how do you create a good product? By making it working the way your client wants. Because I can have million features, but if you cannot use them or you don't care about them, it's not a good product for you. So through our meetings with the existing or potential clients, I'm always asking, okay, which is your current provider, which is a normal question. They say this company, okay, what is it that you like from them? So the first question is what you like from them. And then, for example, while we are talking about the bridge, because this is actually, like the core system of any broker, right? It's not that easy to change the bridge. I totally understand that. But once you actually move, usually, the movement is for a longer period. So they're giving you a list of things that they like. I mean, as a minimum, you have to be there, correct? Like in terms of product, I need to have this, and then tell them, okay, I can provide you this, and on top of that, my diversification is that I can give you an exit for, I don't know, prop trading firm or this or that. That's why I'm referring to the competitors. I totally agree with you that up to a point when you have your target audience, maybe you don't even have a competitor, because if I'm targeting specific type of customer that nobody else in the market has, I don't have a competition, right? But the product has to be there to cover as many needs as possible from as many clients as possible. This is why
I agree 100%. Look, I mean, my the description of there's an abundance is one perspective. There is always going to be that that specific kind of service that others are also offering, and at the end of the day, you've got to be the best at what you do, or at least try your best, and then the rest follows, I guess. So Petro, oh man, this person. I think we're done with actually more than an hour here already.
wow,
it's been
time flies.
Yeah, time flies. So let's do some closing comments here. Thank you for your time, Petro. It was really good.
Thank you very much for having me. I mean, I have to admit that it was so smooth that I didn't realize how fast the time passed. And I mean, well done. I have to say that what you're doing, it's a very nice approach, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't happen from a lot of companies, but that's also good for you. And very nice to meet you. And hopefully I'll see you again.
I appreciate your kind words, Petro, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Obviously, we're going to. And yeah, let's do a boom. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man.